In the grim darkness of the far future, there are horrors that transcend the visible. Terrors that cannot be seen, only heard. Abominations that slip through the cracks between sound and silence, between thought and sensation, between devotion and damnation. This is the account of one such sound, deep within the inquisitorial vaults of the Ordo Hereticus, sealed behind 6 blessed doors and warded by the most potent psychic barriers the Imperium can conjure. There exists a Vox recording. Its designation is 0886-Theta. Its classification, Perditus Extremis, condemned beyond redemption, marked for destruction, yet never destroyed. The recording cannot be destroyed. Every attempt has failed. When Inquisitor Archivist Morden tried to incinerate it with sanctified promethium, the flames formed patterns, impossible shapes that sang in colors that had no name. When Magos Deleticus attempted molecular disintegration, the atoms themselves hummed as they came apart, reforming into crystalline structures that whispered with barely audible tones. And when, in desperation, the recording was hurled into the furnace of a dying star, it was recovered 3 months later, pristine and unmarred, floating in the void exactly where it had first been found, light years from the place of its destruction. The recording remembers. It always returns. It was created by Inquisitor Acoustician Veyra Luthien of the Ordo Hereticus, a name now spoken only in whispers, if it is spoken at all. Before her fall, and make no mistake, what follows is a fall more complete than any recorded in the annals of the Inquisition. She was one of the finest investigators of her age. 37 cults exposed, 14 demonic incursions prevented. Her faith was unquestioned, her record flawless. Until Geryon IV, until the Hive Vox Archivum. Geryon IV was nothing special. A hive world among countless others, its billions of souls toiling in endless servitude to the God Emperor, their lives measured in labor quotas and protein rations, its spires clawed toward a polluted sky, its depths sank into perpetual shadow. Somewhere in those mid-levels, in a cathedral that served 3 million penitents, there was a choir. They called themselves the Choir of the Sacred Ascension. 200 voices raised in daily worship, their hymns echoing through the cathedral's vast chambers for 3 centuries without pause, until the day they stopped, until the day they died mid-hymn, their mouths frozen open, their eyes fixed on something no one else could see. That should have been the end of it. A tragedy, perhaps, a routine investigation into toxins or Xenos infiltration. Standard procedure. But the bodies continued to resonate. Even in death, the choir sang on. What follows is Veyra Luthien's account, transcribed from Vox recording 0886-Theta. It begins with the calm precision of an inquisitor at work, but it does not end that way. Those who have listened to the full recording, there have been 7 confirmed instances, say that it changes. The voice of the Inquisitor shifts as the chronicle unfolds. By the end, it is difficult to tell if the speaker is still Veyra Luthien at all, or something else that learned to wear her voice like a mask. This narration is a translation, a buffer between you and the source. But even so, discretion is advised. Some knowledge carries its own contagion. Some truths, once heard, can never be unheard. The recording begins with static. Beneath it, barely perceptible, there is a rhythm, a pulse, something like a heartbeat but not quite, something like breathing, but from lungs that exist in more dimensions than 3. Listen carefully. You will hear it too, eventually, before the file consumes itself, and it will, it always does, only to return. Let me tell you what it sang. Let me tell you about the Wailing Choir of Slaanesh. Chapter 1. Vox Invocation. This is Inquisitor Acoustician Veyra Luthien, Ordo Hereticus, Segmentum Obscurus, authorized by the hand of the God Emperor himself to investigate, interrogate, and execute in his name. The date is 742, M41, 3rd cycle, 18th hour. I am recording this log from the surface of Geryon IV, Hive Primus, Cathedral District Epsilon 7. The woman who spoke these words did so with the practiced cadence of someone who had made thousands of such recordings. Her voice carried the educated accent of a Schola Progenium graduate, clipped consonants and measured vowels that suggested nobility tempered by military discipline. She was 43 standard Terran years old, though extensive rejuvenation treatments kept her appearing closer to 30. Her service record, which was one to access the sealed vaults that contain it, would reveal a career of exemplary dedication. She stood in what remained of the chapel of the Sacred Ascension, surrounded by her retinue. 3 battle sisters of the Order of the Ebon Chalice, 2 servo skulls equipped with full audiovisual recording apparatus, and her chief interrogator, a man named Castor Vrel, whose specialty was extracting truth from the unwilling. They would all be dead within 6 days. The chapel itself was a marvel of imperial architecture, soaring buttresses of rockcrete and plasteel, walls lined with bas-reliefs depicting the emperor's finest moments, stained glass windows that filtered the hive's polluted light into something resembling beauty. The acoustics were exceptional, engineered over centuries to carry the human voice with perfect clarity to every corner of the vast space. It was also a tomb. 200 bodies remained exactly where they had fallen, arranged in their choir formation. They stood in precise rows on the raised dais, their mouths open in mid-song, their faces frozen in expressions that Veyra would later describe as ecstatic revelation mixed with absolute terror. Most troubling of all, they had not fallen. 18 hours after their hearts had stopped, after their brains had ceased function, after death had claimed them by every medical and theological definition, they remained standing perfectly balanced, perfectly still. Initial examination suggests simultaneous cardiac arrest across all 200 subjects. Veyra continued into her Vox recorder, circling the nearest body. It belonged to a woman in her 60s, dressed in the simple robes of a lay chorister, her silver hair pulled back in a severe bun. Her mouth was open wide enough that Veyra could see the soft palate, the uvula, the dark tunnel of her throat descending into shadow. No visible signs of violence, no evidence of toxins in the preliminary scans, clothes undisturbed, no indication of struggle or panic. They simply stopped. She reached out with one gloved hand and gently touched the woman's jaw. The flesh was cold, stiff with rigor mortis, but there was something else. A faint vibration, barely perceptible, like touching a still ringing bell. Note the continued muscular tension in the laryngeal region, Veyra said, while moving her fingers to the woman's throat. The vocal cords remained taut, almost as if... She paused, tilted her head. For a moment, in the vast silence of the chapel, she thought she heard something. A whisper, the ghost of a melody. Inquisitor? Castor Vrel stood at her shoulder, his augmetic eye whirring as it focused on the corpse. Problem. Did you hear that? Hear what, ma'am? Veyra withdrew her hand. The sensation of the vibration lingered on her fingertips. Nothing. Continue the examination. I want tissue samples from each body, focusing on the vocal cords, larynx, and auditory canals. Something killed them mid-hymn. I want to know what. The next several hours were spent in meticulous documentation. Each body was photographed, catalogued, and examined. The servo skulls drifted through the chapel like patient vultures, their picked recorders capturing every detail. The battle sisters maintained a perimeter, their bolters ready, their prayers a constant murmur beneath the sound of investigation. It was Sister Agatha who first noticed the crystals. "My Lady Inquisitor," she called from the far end of the dais, her voice echoing in the cavernous space. "You should see this." Veyra crossed to where the sister stood beside a young man, barely 20, his choir robes still pristine. His mouth hung open, and as Veyra approached, she saw what had caught the battle sister's attention. In the back of his throat, catching the filtered light from above, something glittered. "Bring illumination," Veyra ordered, and one of the servo skulls descended, its lumen array focusing into the corpse's mouth. The light revealed a web of crystalline filaments, impossibly thin, threading through the soft tissue of the throat. They caught the light like spun glass, refracting it into spectrum patterns that shouldn't have been possible with simple illumination. The filaments ran deeper, disappearing down into the darkness of the esophagus, but also branching upward, toward. "Emperor's mercy," Castor breathed. The filaments connected to the vocal cords themselves, wrapped around them like the strings of some obscene instrument. In the direct light, they seemed to pulse, not visibly, but in a way that made the eye struggle to focus, as if they existed slightly out of phase with normal reality. "I need a full dissection," Veyra said, her voice steady despite the cold dread beginning to coil in her stomach. "Carefully. I want to know where these filaments originate and what they're made of." The answer to the first question came quickly. Everywhere. Everybody contained them. The second question would take longer to answer, and the answer, when it came, would be worse than ignorance. As the day wore into night and the investigation continued, Veyra found herself drawn repeatedly to the same observation: the precision. Whatever had killed these people had done so with perfect synchronization. 200 hearts stopping in the same instant. 200 final breaths exhaled in unison. 200 souls departing while locked in the same note of the same hymn. The hymn itself was easily identified. Ave Imperator Gloriam, a standard supplication sung in hive chapels across the galaxy. Nothing unusual about it, nothing forbidden or corrupted in its lyrics or composition. Yet something about it had killed everyone who sang it. By midnight, the first dissection was complete. Tech priest Augur Reese, summoned from the local Mechanicus enclave, had examined the filaments under extreme magnification. His findings were presented in the flat, emotionless binary cant of the priesthood, but even his Vox synthesizer couldn't quite mask the uncertainty. Material composition: unknown. Crystalline structure suggests a silicate base, but the molecular scan returns no consistent results. Most troubling, filaments appear to be vibrating at a frequency too subtle for standard measurement. Theoretical, structure exists partially in warp space, manifesting in the material realm through resonance phenomena. "You're saying this is warp-touched," Veyra said. It wasn't a question. "Affirmative. Recommend immediate." The lights went out. In the absolute darkness, in the breathless moment before the emergency lumens activated, Veyra heard it clearly. All of them heard it. A whisper of sound, multiple voices, harmonizing, coming from the dead mouths of the choir. The emergency lumens flickered to life, bathing everything in sickly red. The bodies stood unchanged, mouths still open, eyes still fixed on nothing. But in the silence that followed, as Veyra's heart hammered against her ribs, as the battle sisters raised their bolters and the tech priest's manipulator arms spread in defensive posture, she could still feel it. The vibration, the resonance, traveling through the floor, through the air, through her bones. "Did you hear that?" She whispered into the Vox recorder, knowing the answer, dreading it. "Did you hear them sing?" The chapel gave no answer. But somewhere in its vast darkness, in the spaces between the pillars and the shadows beneath the buttresses, something had begun to listen. Something that had been waiting for someone to ask that question. Something that was very pleasing. Veyra Luthien had finally arrived. The Vox recording crackles. When it resumes, Veyra's voice is slightly different, still professional, still measured. But underneath, barely noticeable, there is a new quality, like a second voice, pitched so perfectly that it seems to be her own echo. But it isn't an echo. It's something else. Something that has learned to harmonize. Chapter 2. The Choir of Stilled Tongues. Veyra's voice returned, calm but heavy. Vox log continued. Day 2 of the investigation. Sleep was difficult. She stood once again among the dead, now relocated to the cathedral's mortuary. The air was cold, sterile, and still. The bodies had been moved here with reverence and fear, arranged on examination slabs and kept upright by support structures that preserved the moment of their deaths. 200 silent witnesses, frozen mid-hymn. The night before had been filled with something that wasn't sound but felt like it. The absence of noise that pressed against the mind like pressure beneath deep water. Veyra had tried to rest in her quarters, but sleep came in fragments. Each dream placed her among the choir again, her mouth open, her voice part of theirs, harmonizing in tones that clawed at her sanity. She woke up gasping, her throat raw, her body trembling. Yet her Vox recorder, ever vigilant, had captured nothing. The room had been silent. She forced her tone steady as she resumed her log. Tech Priest Reese has completed his analysis of the crystalline filaments. The results are disturbing. The crystals are organic, grown from the tissue of the throat itself, but the substance shouldn't exist outside of the warp. Under ultraviolet light, they emit vibrations, frequencies that vary by individual but together. She hesitated, reading the data again. Together, they form a perfect C major chord, tuned to absolute precision, statistically impossible. Someone or something turned these people into instruments. Caster Vrel appeared beside her, the glow of his augmetic eye reflecting from the slabs. He held a portable analyzer, its display pulsing with sound patterns. We ran the test, Inquisitor. You'll want to see this. Proceed. He aimed the ultraviolet projector at the nearest corpse, a middle-aged man, still upright, his mouth slightly open. The crystals in his throat began to shimmer, then they glowed. A tone emerged, pure, unwavering, and flawless. It didn't enter the ear so much as settle behind the eyes, vibrating in the skull, until thought itself began to waver. See natural, Caster said quietly. 261.63 Hertz. Perfect tuning. He moved to the next body. Another note joined the first, then another. The mortuary filled with layered tones, E natural, G natural, rising together into harmony. The air trembled. The walls seemed to breathe. By the 10th body, the chamber was alive with resonance. It was beautiful, terribly, impossibly beautiful. The sound was mathematical perfection, rendered audible. It was music that transcended understanding, its symmetry so flawless it hurt to hear. Stop, Veyra managed. Turn it off. Caster killed the light. The tones faded but slowly, as if reluctant to die. And in those dying vibrations, Veyra heard something hidden within them. Not notes, not language, but meaning. Something older than words, something alive. When the last echo faded, silence followed, but it was wrong. Too heavy, too aware. There's more, Caster said. His complexion was ashen beneath the artificial eye. We found a pattern in the waveform. Sister Agatha recognized it. The battle sister stepped forward, her armor etched with devotion, her expression grim. It's a hymn, she said. Not one of ours, not in any ecclesiastical records, but I've heard it before, in studies of Slaaneshi corruption. The name itself seemed to chill the air. Slaanesh, the Dark Prince, the Lord of Excess. Beauty, ecstasy, perfection, madness, all entwined until they became the same thing. You're certain? Veyra asked, though she already knew. The pattern matches other incidents. The Song Plague of Carthus 7, the Dominion of Fire, all cases where sound was the vector. Agatha's hand rested on her bolter. This wasn't a slaughter. It was a performance. The choir was made into a prayer, a song still being sung. Veyra stared at the rows of bodies, 200 perfect instruments, waiting for a conductor. Quarantine this district, she ordered. No one enters or leaves every witness, every attendant. I want them all isolated. Psychic screening begins immediately. She stopped speaking, her head tilted slightly. There it was again, that faint hum. A sound at the edge of perception. Everyone heard it. Castor stiffened. Agatha's eyes widened. Even the tech priest faltered mid-motion. It came from the bodies. Not the throats, not the crystals, but from somewhere deeper, somewhere beyond flesh. They're not just singing, Veyra whispered, voice trembling. They're responding. To us. To our presence. Emperor, preserve us. They're aware. She stepped closer to the nearest corpse. The man's eyes were open, glazed and lifeless. Yet behind the dull surface, something stirred. Something that saw her, recognized her. Inquisitor, back away, Agatha warned, bolter raised. But Veyra couldn't. The air between them felt alive, resonant. She could almost feel the rhythm of his gaze, the vibration of unseen music passing through her bones. The corpse's jaw moved. Only slightly, but enough. A whisper of air escaped through the crystalline filaments, and the sound that emerged was not a word, not a voice, but a single note of infinite depth. That note spoke to her. It conveyed meaning beyond language, visions, sensations, and impossible knowledge. She glimpsed a god of sound and beauty, a being whose song shaped creation itself, every vibration, a thought, every tone, a new world, a melody without end. It spoke of Slaanesh. Veyra screamed, a raw human sound, torn from her throat in instinctive rejection. The echo reverberated through the mortuary until it found harmony with the notes still ringing from the corpse. For one impossible second, her scream became part of the music. Then, Sister Agatha fired. The bolter shell struck the body, detonating it into shards of flesh, bone, and crystal. The pieces rained across the slabs in a glittering haze. For a heartbeat, there was silence. Then, from all around, came the hum, low, trembling, growing. The remaining bodies began to vibrate, to sway, to sing. Evacuate the mortuary, Veyra commanded, her composure cracking. Seal it, warp wards on every entrance. The hum deepened into thunder. 200 voices, dead yet united, rose as one. Now. They ran, every one of them. Even the battle sister, even the machine priest. They fled from the sound no faith could silence. Behind them, the mortuary doors slammed shut. The sacred seals burned with light. But through the walls, through the stone itself, the music continued. And in the echoing corridors, Veyra Luthien heard a voice. Many voices, harmonizing in impossible perfection. We're so glad you came. We've been practicing. Would you like to hear the chorus? Later, in her official report, she would claim that the silence that followed had harmonized. But that was a lie. There was no silence anymore. There never would be again. Chapter 3. The sound that isn't there. Day 3. I can hear it in my sleep. I can hear it when I'm awake. I can hear it in the spaces between heartbeats. Castor says I'm imagining it. His scans show nothing, but I know what I hear. God, Emperor, forgive me, I know. Veyra's voice had grown softer, rougher, worn by exhaustion and fear. She sat in the cathedral's scriptorium, surrounded by towers of ancient texts and data slates, the relics of forbidden knowledge. 3 days without sleep had left her pale and trembling. Her cup of recaf shook in her hand. Every sip tasted of metal. Every blink brought with it the faintest echo of music that wasn't there. The quarantine had widened. The entire cathedral district, 10,000 souls, was sealed. The faithful are confined to their quarters. Panic and confusion spread through the hive's upper tiers, but Veyra could not allow herself to care. How could she explain to them that the danger was not flesh or toxin, but sound itself? The choir's bodies remained in the mortuary, under guard by a full squad of Sisters of Battle. Each sister wore oral dampeners, each armed with psychic wards. The humming had not ceased. It had evolved, richer now, deeper, as though the dead were practicing, as though they were perfecting their performance. But Veyra's attention had turned elsewhere, to the organ. It had been discovered in a chamber beneath the chapel, one that did not appear on any of the cathedral's blueprints, a hidden room sealed for centuries behind a false wall. A servo-skull survey had detected the hollow space, and when the stone was broken open, they found it waiting. An organ, ancient and immense, not crafted by human hands as the Imperium understood them. The wood was darker than voidstone, its inlays gleaming in patterns that defied Euclidean geometry. Its pipes rose into impossible curves, spiraling into dimensions the human eye struggled to follow. And it was playing, not audibly, not in any frequency the Vox recorders could capture, but the pipes moved. Keys depressed themselves. Air flowed through invisible channels. The instrument performed a melody that could not be heard, only felt. When Veyra first stepped inside, she felt the air tighten around her like a fist. Her ears registered motion where there was none. Her teeth vibrated against one another. She checked her equipment, no readings. Absolute silence. Yet her entire body screamed otherwise. She began a new log. Her voice was barely steady. The organ predates the cathedral itself. Records suggest it was already here when the first missionaries landed on Geryon IV. The builders erected the cathedral above it, sealed it away, never to be touched. There are warnings in the foundation texts. Let no key be struck, let no note be sounded. Let the silent song remain unsung. They knew what it was. She turned the brittle page of a scripture with trembling fingers. They tried to protect future generations, but they didn't destroy it. Did they fear it? Worship it? Or did they try and fail? In the quiet of the scriptorium, one of her candles flickered. The flame danced not with the air, but in rhythm, as though obeying a beat too faint to hear. The organ's chamber had already claimed victims. 3 servo skulls had imploded during analysis, crushed inward, their mechanical and organic components fused into microscopic debris. The 4th survived, but its recordings were madness. Data streams showing sound levels at infinity and 0 simultaneously, readings that broke the laws of physics. Tech priest Reese had examined one of the shattered skulls. Compression from internal vector, he'd said in his lifeless monotone. Implosion originated within cores, informational overload, as if the machine attempted to hear something that could not exist. He had paused for several seconds, an uncharacteristic hesitation, as if the sound itself had weight. Sister Agatha had been less clinical. "It's cursed," she'd said coldly. "We should burn it. Seal this place with fire and faith." But Veyra was an inquisitor. and Inquisitors did not turn away from forbidden truths. Her purpose was to look into the darkness and understand what stared back, even if that darkness began to sing. She stood, gathering her data slates, her recaf untouched. The scriptorum's aisles stretched around her like the ribs of a dead god. The air was too still. The silence pressed too tightly against her ears. Somewhere beyond the shelves, she thought she heard movement, soft, measured, deliberate. She left the room, her steps echoing down the cathedral's corridors. The architecture seemed to shift as she walked, the carvings along the walls alive in the corners of her vision. Shadows bent in ways they should not bend. Light passed through stained glass in colors she had never seen before. And underneath it all, that pressure, that soundless, endless hum. The stairwell to the organ chamber spiraled downward, deeper than she remembered. She descended alone, her hand brushing against cold stone slick with condensation. Her Vox recorder remained in the scriptorum, still running. A deception. Proof she had stayed at her desk all night. If anyone survived to check. At the bottom, she entered the chamber. The organ awaited her like a sleeping titan. Its surface drank the light from her lumen, swallowing every reflection. The air felt heavy, charged with intent. "What are you?" she whispered. Her voice seemed to echo infinitely, as though reflected by invisible walls that stretched across realities. She reached out. Her fingertips brushed one of the pipes. The universe turned inside out. Sound became color, color became taste, and thought became vibration. Every sense inverted. She was no longer Veyra Luthien. She was resonance. A single note within an infinite chord, she could see the shape of noise, taste the weight of light. In a single blinding instant, she understood. The organ was not an instrument. It was an ear. It had been listening for centuries, recording every prayer, every confession, every hymn. It had gathered the collective devotion of millions and compressed it into something pure, something sharp, something sentient, and now it was ready to answer. Veyra fell to her knees, tears burning down her cheeks. Her throat ached as if she'd been screaming. She tried to breathe, but the air vibrated inside her lungs. The pipe she'd touched quivered, blurring with speed, emitting no sound but radiating meaning directly into her bones. Other pipes joined, one after another. A chord of silence filled the room with pressure. The vibration climbed higher, beyond hearing, beyond sanity. Her body shook, her teeth rattled. Her vision swam with color that had no name. She stumbled toward the stairs. She had to get out, to get back to the world where silence still existed, where the air did not pulse with invisible song. But even as she climbed, she knew the truth. Silence was a lie. It always had been. The universe itself was music, a cosmic symphony that had never ceased since the first spark of creation. She had simply been deaf to it. Until now. The organ had opened her ears. It had taught her to listen. And now she could hear everything. The grand composition, the eternal hymn, the song Slaanesh sang at the birth of all things and would sing again at the end. She could hear it. She would always hear it. Silence had a frequency, and that frequency was screaming. Chapter 4, Harmonics of Flesh. Day 4. Tech Priest Reese has decoded the waveform. I wish he hadn't. God Emperor, forgive us both. I wish he hadn't. The laboratory was a sanctified place, a fusion of science and faith. Every wall was engraved with litanies of purity, every console marked by the sigils of the machine god. Even the air smelled of incense and sacred oil. Yet no amount of ritual could cleanse what waited on the data screen before them. Reese stood rigid before the display, his mechadendrites buried in the cathedral's ancient data stacks. The screen pulsed with shifting lines of color, sound given shape. the visual echo of the choir's death song. The precision, Rhys said softly, his vox synth unable to disguise the awe behind his words, is beyond organic capability, beyond possibility. Veyra watched the patterns turn within themselves, spiraling into impossible geometry. Her eyes were hollow, her body trembling from sleeplessness. For 3 nights, she'd chased meaning through a fog of exhaustion and dread, haunted by dreams of music that wrapped around her soul like chains. "Show me," she said. Rhys complied. The waveform expanded, fractaling outward patterns within patterns, harmonics nested inside one another like living things. Initial analysis indicated simple harmonics, Rhys explained, but deeper inspection revealed encoded information within the overtones data, hidden in frequencies above human hearing. What kind of data? Human genome, 200 sequences, each corresponding to one of the choir. Their heartbeats, their breath rhythms, every biometric detail translated into acoustic form. Veyra's breath caught. "You mean it recorded their bodies, their lives?" He turned to her, mechanical eye focusing with a faint click. Not recorded, controlled. The hymn contained the data required to manipulate autonomic functions. It synchronized the choir's heartbeats through entrainment, oscillating systems, aligning to a dominant frequency. When synchronization reached critical threshold, he paused, raising one steel limb. Every heart stopped at once. Perfect unison. 200 deaths on the same note. Veyra stared at the display. The realization hollowed her. This was not mere heresy. It was art, a work of impossible precision and cruelty, composed not to destroy, but to perform. How long would it take to create something like this? "Centuries," Rhys said. Each participant tuned individually, their physiology studied, adapted, refined. Only one with mastery over both sound and the warp could achieve such symmetry. Veyra opened her mouth to speak, but alarm screamed through the laboratory. The walls pulsed red. The vox crackled to life. "Inquisitor!" Sister Agatha's voice was fractured by static. "The mortuary. It's happening again." They ran. The cathedral's corridors blurred into a tunnel of noise and motion. Alarms blared. Doors sealed themselves. But Veyra's override codes tore them open. Castor limped behind her, his augmetic leg whining with strain. Rhys glided beside them, robes streaming like tattered wings. The sound reached them before the sight, a deep vibration rolling through the stone like the heartbeat of a god. The mortuary doors shimmered as if the air itself had liquefied. 2 guards lay sprawled across the floor, blood leaking from eyes and ears. Their armor was fractured, their bodies still twitching in time to an unheard rhythm. Veyra shouted, "Stay back," but she was already moving forward. Her psychic wards flared into golden fire. She pushed against the pressure and opened the door. The mortuary was alive. The dead were moving. They stood in perfect formation, swaying together, mouths open in song. Crystals blazed in their throats, flooding the chamber with spectral light. The air rippled with sound that was both melody and madness. They sang Ave Imperator Gloriam, the hymn that had killed them, but inverted, turned inside out. Its beauty was agony, its harmony corruption. "Shut it down!" Veyra screamed. "Cut the power!" "There is no power," Rhys answered, his voice shaking for the first time. "The sound itself drives them. The resonance animates the flesh." One of the corpses turned its head toward Veyra. The movement was slow, deliberate, unnatural. Its eyes found hers. Its mouth kept singing. Then its lungs filled with air. Its hands began to move. "Open fire!" Bolter shells exploded through the room, tearing bodies apart. Flesh and crystal shattered, spraying the air with glittering dust. But the song did not stop. It changed, adjusted, and rebalanced itself. Each missing voice is replaced by the others. Even the fragments on the floor vibrated in tune. "Fall back," Veyra ordered. "Seal the door." But the sound had already found her. It started in her chest, a vibration, faint at first, then growing. Her throat tightened. Her jaw trembled. She could feel her vocal cords humming on their own. She was going to sing. "No," she whispered, clenching her teeth until she tasted blood. But the music was inside her now, spreading through her lungs, aligning her breath with the rhythm of the choir. Beside her, Castor's voice broke free, a clear, resonant tone, impossibly pure. Terror flooded his face as he tried to choke it down, his hands clawing at his throat. His flesh shimmered. The veins beneath his skin turned to glass. Sister Agatha fell next, her voice rising in perfect pitch. Her prayers twisted into praise for another god entirely. Only tech priest Rhys remained untouched, his machine mind insulated against the melody. He seized Veyra by the arm, dragging her from the chamber as she fought against the pull of the song. The doors slammed behind them. The seal flared with light. Veyra collapsed, gasping. Her throat burned. The vibration hadn't left. It was still inside her, whispering, waiting. "Castor," she rasped. "Agatha, we have to." "They're gone," Rhys said. "They are instruments now." Veyra wanted to argue, but the truth was already singing from behind the wall. The new voices joined the choir. Castor's deep resonance, Agatha's alto, others too. The harmony grew richer, more complete. "How many?" she whispered. Rhys calculated. Within a day, everyone in the cathedral. Within a week, the entire district. The song expands exponentially. Each new voice amplifies its reach. "Then we burn it," she said. "Level the district. Orbital strike if necessary." Her Vox unit crackled. Hive Governor Manna's voice cut through the static. "Inquisitor, the singing, it's everywhere. Thousands of citizens standing in the streets. We can't stop them. What do we do?" Veyra closed her eyes. She could feel her pulse synchronizing with the music beyond the door. "Seal every entrance to the lower hive," she said. "Everything. Then evacuate the upper levels. Get as many people off-world as you can. But the lower hive holds millions." "Do it," she said. "This isn't a quarantine anymore." "Then what is it?" Veyra looked down at her trembling hands. Her fingers tapped against her thigh in perfect rhythm. "It's a performance," she said softly. "And we're all invited to join." She ended the transmission. "The organ," she said to Rhys. "It's the source. The choir was only the beginning. The organ conducts them. If we destroy it..." "You can't," Rhys interrupted. "You're already compromised. Neurological synchronization is increasing. You will lose control soon." "I know," she whispered. "That's why you have to do it. You're the only one left who can resist." Rhys hesitated, processors running calculations that offered no hope. Then finally, he bowed his head. Acknowledged. Preparation time, 6 hours. Together they turned toward the stairs that led down into the cathedral's depths. Their footsteps echoed in perfect time. The rhythm was already inside her. Every breath, every heartbeat, part of the same song now. Behind them, the mortuary sang, and through the hive, the chorus spread. 200 voices had become 2,000. 2,000 would become 20,000 by dawn. The song had learned their rhythm, and rhythm was just another word for heartbeat, another word for life. She could feel her pulse keeping time with the music, her mind arranging her thoughts in patterns of harmony and order. The song had learned their rhythm. Now it was teaching them to dance. Chapter 5. Reflections that sing. Day 5. The Mirrors. Dear Emperor. The Mirrors. The choir's preparation chamber was once a place of beauty and ritual. Here, singers had tuned their voices, adjusted their vestments, and whispered their final prayers before lifting their hymns to the God Emperor. Now it was silent, or nearly silent. The air carried the faint hum of something that was not silence. The walls were lined with mirrors, tall, pristine, impossibly polished. They had stood for centuries, untouched by time or decay. And they were wrong. At first, Veyra thought her eyes deceived her. Too many sleepless nights, too many horrors carved into her thoughts. But when she asked Rhys to confirm what she saw, his optical sensors, uncompromising, mechanical, reported the same. The reflections did not move in sync. When Veyra raised her hand, the reflection followed, late by a heartbeat. When she turned her head, her mirrored self turned after, its motion slightly delayed, like a memory playing itself back. And when she stopped moving entirely, her reflection did not. Its lips moved, forming words, singing. "Explanation," she demanded. Rhys's lenses rotated with an audible click. Material analysis, ordinary crystal. Reflection conforms to standard optical behavior. However, the image displays non-linear synchronization. In Gothic, tech priest. He turned one mechadendrite toward the nearest mirror. Hypothesis: reality membrane compromised by sustained warp acoustic exposure. The mirrors may no longer show the present, they may be showing potential. Veyra stared at him. Potential? What you will become. The words hit her harder than she expected. She looked again, truly looked. Her reflection stood differently now. Feet together, shoulders squared, hands clasped as if in silent devotion. Its mouth was open in song, though no sound reached her ears. The eyes that looked back were her own, only not. There was something inside them now, something vast, something awake. Then the reflection smiled. Veyra didn't. "We'll document this," she said, raising her pict recorder. But when she reviewed the playback, everything appeared normal. No delay, no motion, no song, only stillness. Whatever this was, it existed between perception and proof, something that lived in the act of looking. She moved along the walls, mirror to mirror. Each one showed her in a different form. In one, she was still human. In another, her flesh had become translucent, crystalline veins pulsing beneath her skin. In another, she was pure light and vibration, no body, no face, only resonance given shape. "They're not predictions," she whispered. "They're recordings. These mirrors have been watching for centuries, reflecting every choir, every hymn. The corruption didn't start with the song. It started here, waiting." Rhys inclined his head. Then the choir's fate was predetermined. Each rehearsal, each prayer layered upon the last until the structure reached a critical threshold. Before Veyra could answer, the mirrors sang. A single note at first, clear, pure, perfect. She spun, searching for the source, but it came from everywhere at once. The reflections opened their mouths in unison, and though her lips stayed closed, their voices rose. Every version of herself, past, present, and possible, was singing. The sound was impossibly beautiful, terrifyingly so. "Fascinating," Rhys said, adjusting his sensors. "They are resonating through reflected space. Sound propagation within a non-linear optical domain in theory." "Rhys!" she snapped. "They're singing!" The note deepened. Other mirrors joined in, forming chords so rich that the air itself seemed to vibrate. Veyra's bones ached. Her vision swam. She clamped her hands over her ears, but the sound traveled through her flesh, through the marrow. "Break them!" she screamed. "Now!" Rhys obeyed. His mechadendrites lashed out, striking the nearest mirror. It shattered, but the singing didn't stop. Each shard continued to hum. 1,000 glittering fragments littered the floor, each one vibrating in harmony with the others. The song had fractured, but not weakened. It had multiplied. "Stop!" Veyra shouted. "You're making it worse. Every fragment's another voice." She was right. Where 10 mirrors had sung, now there were thousands. The sound folded in on itself, complexity building, until her brain could no longer process the layers. The floor rippled beneath her boots, the reflections inside the shards twisting, merging, multiplying. In every fragment she saw herself, each reflection a different phase of her transformation. The tide of glass began to move, crawling, sliding, singing. They fled. The fragments flowed out through the chamber door, across the floor, a glittering current of living sound. Behind them, the last intact mirrors began to crack. Each fracture spread in perfect geometry, spider-webbing into fractals that pulsed with light. Every break birthed more reflections, more singers. The choir was growing again. Only this time, it wasn't made of flesh. "It's spreading," Rhys said. "Every reflective surface in the cathedral is resonating. Windows, altars, metal fixtures, even sanctified oils produce a mirror sheen." "It's turning the cathedral into an instrument," Veyra said quietly. "Every wall a string. Every corridor is a throat." They reached the main sanctuary. The stained glass saints were shattering. The Emperor's image fragmented into 1,000 singing shards, each piece glowing with impossible light. His holy face was now a chorus. "The demolition charges," Veyra said. "Tell me they're ready." "Partial completion. 3 more hours." "We don't have 3 hours." Rhys turned to obey, heading toward the lower catacombs to prepare what he could. Veyra remained alone in the vast chamber, surrounded by light and sound. She walked to the altar, polished black granite smooth as a mirror. Her reflection met her there. It stood tall, serene. Its mouth moved in perfect circles, shaping notes she could not hear but could feel in her bones. Its eyes were calm, triumphant, and its voice, though silent, was radiant. It wasn't human anymore. It was divine. "Is this it?" Veyra whispered. "Is this what you wanted? To make all of us instruments? To make creation itself your choir?" Her reflection smiled. It didn't need to speak. She already knew the answer. "Yes, this is what you wanted too. To belong, to transcend, to stop being mortal and become part of something perfect." Veyra stumbled back. She could feel the vibration crawling up her throat again. When she spoke, her voice came out as a note, clear, perfect, unbroken, C-sharp. "No," she tried to say, forcing words through the melody. "I serve the Emperor. I won't." The reflection smiled wider. "You already have." The truth hit her like a hammer. Every analysis, every test, every question she had asked had not been resistance. It had been orchestration. Every act of observation had strengthened the phenomenon. She hadn't been fighting the song. She had been conducting it. The floor glittered around her as the fragments converged, forming a ring of singing glass. In each shard, her reflection sang in harmony, thousands of versions of herself, each one transformed, each one radiant, each one perfect. The sound rose to a crescendo. Veyra fell to her knees, surrounded by herself, by her future, by her choir. And as the mirrors sang, as the air trembled, she finally understood. The reflections weren't echoes, they were rehearsals. The performance had only just begun. Chapter 6. Confessor's Feedback. Day 6. Father Meridius came to me for absolution. I should have turned him away. I should have known what he would bring. He was an old man, one of the last remaining servants of the cathedral, untouched by the spreading corruption, or so Veyra thought. His face was carved with the weight of decades spent hearing the sins of others. His hands shook, his breath trembled, yet his eyes still held that gentle priestly light. But when he entered her chamber, escorted by 2 battle sisters, she saw the streaks of dried black blood trailing from his ears. "Father Meridius," she said, "you shouldn't be here. The quarantine." "I hear them," he interrupted, his voice a rasp of exhaustion and revelation. "The confessions. I hear them before they're spoken. Before the penitents even enter the booth, their guilt sings to me, Inquisitor. Every lie, every desire, every sin has a note. I hear it." Veyra's stomach turned. "When did it start?" "The morning after the mortuary," he said softly. "I came to my confessional as I always have. But when the first sinner approached, I already knew his words. His remorse had a frequency. His shame, a melody." He looked up at her with eyes clouded by age and terror. "At first I thought it was a blessing," he whispered. "The Emperor granted me deeper perception. But then, they started forming." He pulled back the thin white hair from his temples. Inside his ear canal, Veyra saw clusters of crystalline pearls, tiny translucent spheres that pulsed faintly in time with his heartbeat. "Holy throne," she breathed. "Ossified sin," Meridius murmured. "Every confession I've ever heard, crystallized within me. 6 decades of human guilt, growing like coral, every lie, every betrayal, every moment of doubt. They've all taken shape." He smiled, and the smile was wrong. "Would you like to hear them, Inquisitor?" he asked. "Every sin has its own note. Murder is a bass, lust a trembling soprano, and heresy—" He laughed, the sound splitting into 2 tones, harmonizing with itself. "Heresy is the most beautiful chord of all." "Father, you need treatment," Veyra said carefully. "We can remove them before." "Before what?" he cut in. "Before I become like them. Too late. I've been part of the performance since the first confession I heard. Every whispered sin, every absolution, I've been tuning the choir." He reached out and seized her wrist. His grip was shockingly strong, and she felt it at once. The vibration. His body was humming. Every bone, every muscle, every cell resonated with some terrible internal rhythm. "You feel it too, don't you?" he said. "The music beneath everything. The song that's always been there. We didn't create music, Inquisitor. We merely discovered it." She pulled back, shaking. "You were exposed through the confessional. The booth is built beside the choir hall. You've been absorbing the song through the walls. Hearing it?" He laughed again, that awful layered sound. "I've been amplifying it. Every confession added to the resonance. Every sin is another note. The booth is a resonant chamber, centuries of guilt echoing through it until the sound became alive." He walked to the window, looking out at the hive. Far below, the city flickered with rhythmic light, the synchronized pulse of 1,000,000 unseen throats. "Do you know what the greatest sin is, Inquisitor?" "Original sin," Veyra said, her hand tightening on her pistol. "No." He turned to face her. The light caught his eyes, and she saw the crystalline gleam within them. "The greatest sin is silence. We were made to sing, to give voice to creation. But humanity chose silence instead. We denied the song." He took a step toward her, then another, each perfectly timed, each landing in rhythm. "The Emperor understood," he said. "Why do you think there are hymns in every church? Chants in every ritual? Because sound is power. Sound shapes reality." Veyra raised her pistol. "Those hymns praise the Emperor, not Slaanesh." Meridius tilted his head, the movement sharp, deliberate. "Are you sure?" He began to hum, low, deep, a vibration more felt than heard. "Every prayer," he said, "is an invocation. The only question is which God is listening." Veyra felt her throat tremble. Her voice wanted to join his. She fought it down. "Father Meridius," she said, forcing command into her tone. "Resist this, remember your vows." He stopped humming, smiled sadly. "I remember everything. Every sin ever spoken into my ears. And do you know what I've learned?" He opened his robes. His chest was no longer flesh. Crystals jutted from it, pulsing with inner light, each one singing a different note. "We are all guilty," he said, his voice now a harmony of many. "Every human carries darkness, and that darkness sings." Then he opened his mouth wider than any human should. His jaw cracked, dislocating, and from his throat came 1,000 voices. Every confession he had ever heard, every plea, every whispered prayer, all pouring from him at once. Veyra fired. The bolt struck him squarely, the explosion releasing not blood but sound. A concussive blast of pure frequency shattered the windows, splintered the walls. Meridius didn't fall. His chest was a crater of light and resonance. His voice, or something greater behind it, spoke through the vibration. Faith became feedback, it said. Confession became amplification. Another shot. Another eruption of harmonic shock waves. The crystals sang louder, brighter. "You can't kill me," he said, though his lips never moved. "I am every sin ever spoken aloud. I am the echo of your kind." Veyra aimed higher. "Then I'll silence you." The round struck his head. The explosion obliterated it. For a heartbeat, he was still. Then the body straightened and sang. The voice that came was no longer human, no longer singular. It was vast, layered, exquisite in its horror. "We have been listening," it said, "since the first human learned to speak, since the first prayer reached the void. We have heard every note, every cry, every song you called holy, and now we sing them back." The headless body moved toward her, hands outstretched, crystalline fingers shimmering. Veyra fired again, but the weapon clicked empty. She stepped back, too slow. A blast of plasma struck the figure from the side, disintegrating it in a bloom of white fire. Tech Priest Reese stood in the doorway, weapon still glowing. "The charges are placed," he said flatly. "Recommend detonation. Immediately." Veyra stared at the floor. Even the ash was singing. "Do it," she said. "End it." Reese triggered the detonator. Far below in the buried chamber, the explosives ignited. The cathedral shook. Fire roared through the tunnels. The black organ, that impossible relic, was consumed. For a moment there was quiet. Then, from the depths, came the sound. The organ was not destroyed. It was awake. The first note rose like the birth of a universe. A sound older than stars, vast enough to drown reason. It wasn't merely heard, it was known. The fundamental tone that held reality together. The note that played at the dawn of creation, and would still echo when all things ended. Veyra fell to her knees, hands clamped over her ears as blood ran between her fingers. Reese convulsed, his augmetics seizing, overwhelmed by data his mind could not contain. She understood then. The organ had never been just an instrument. It was an idea, the sound of existence itself. You couldn't destroy an idea, you could only listen. And listening meant surrender. The walls began to hum, the floor, the air, the cathedral and everything within it were joining the harmony. Veyra reached for her Vox recorder, voice trembling, breaking apart into harmonics. "We tried," she said. "We tried to stop it, but some songs are too perfect to refuse." Her throat tightened. The last words became music. "Some melodies," she breathed, "are too beautiful to deny." Her mouth opened. Her voice rose, pure and perfect. Faith had become feedback, and the feedback sent them all home. Chapter 7, Resonant Autopsy. Day 7. Or is it 8? Time has become melodic. Linear progression is replaced by recursive harmony. I remember yesterday. I remember tomorrow. I remember the moment when past and future converge into eternal present. And it sounds like... Veyra stood in the cathedral's medici facility, staring at the body on the examination slab. Not one of the original choir members. She'd run out of those days ago, or would run out in days to come, depending on which direction you traveled through time's new spiral geometry. This was Sister Agatha. The battle sister had been recovered from the sealed mortuary 12 hours ago, or would be recovered 12 hours from now. The chronology was becoming difficult to track. Veyra found herself existing in multiple temporal states simultaneously, experiencing events before and after they occurred, all moments overlapping like a chord where past, present, and future sounded together in perfect harmony. But the body was real, present, physical, or had been. "Begin autopsy," Veyra said into her Vox recorder, though her voice had changed. It carried overtones now, harmonics that spoke in frequencies beyond human hearing, but somehow conveying more meaning than words ever could. The first incision revealed a transformation more complete than anything Veyra had witnessed yet. Sister Agatha's flesh had retained its basic form, skin, muscle, bone arranged in human configuration, but the substance had changed. Beneath the scalpel, the tissue didn't part so much as separate into layers of resonating frequency, each stratum humming its own note. The vocal cords were no longer cords. They had become translucent filaments, gossamer thin, arranged in patterns that suggested harp strings more than biological tissue. Each filament was tuned to a specific frequency, and when Veyra touched them with a probe, carefully, reverently, they sang. Not with Sister Agatha's voice, with something more fundamental. The sound wasn't produced by air moving across tissue, but by the strings themselves vibrating in response to what? The warp, reality's underlying frequency. The song that all matter sang when you listened closely enough. Veyra plucked one of the filaments. It vibrated, and the sound that emerged was laughter. Not from lungs, not from Sister Agatha's corpse, from the air itself, from space, from the gap between atoms where sound should not exist, but somehow did. The laughter was joyous, ecstatic, the laugh of someone experiencing pleasure beyond mortal comprehension, sensation elevated to the level of religious experience, flesh transcended and reborn as pure sensation. It was horrifying. It was beautiful. It was both and neither and everything in between. The transformation is complete, Veyra narrated, her voice clinical despite the way her hands shook, despite the way her own throat ached with sympathy, vibrations. Subject's biology has been entirely restructured. Flesh retains superficial human appearance, but functions according to principles that violate known anatomical understanding. The vocal apparatus has become... She paused, searching for words in High Gothic, in Low Gothic, in any human language that might contain the concepts she was trying to express. Found none. Settled for inadequacy. An instrument of divine manufacture. When stimulated, it produces not sound but pure experience. Auditory information transcoded into sensation, then back into sound, creating feedback loop that amplifies with each iteration. The listener doesn't just hear the laughter, they become the laughter. They remember laughing, will laugh, are laughing across all possible timelines simultaneously. She plucked another filament. This time, the sound was weeping. Profound sorrow, crystallized into acoustic form. The grief of 10,000 funerals, 1,000,000 farewells, every loss humanity had ever suffered, compressed into a single note and released into the world. Veyra felt tears streaming down her face, felt her chest heave with sobs she couldn't control, felt the weight of cosmic sadness crushing her. But beneath the sorrow, woven through it like a thread of gold through dark fabric, was ecstasy. The pain was so exquisite, so perfect, so exactly calibrated to human capacity for suffering that it became its own kind of pleasure. Hurt elevated to art, agony transformed into aria. Each filament contains compressed emotional data, she continued, her voice thick with tears and revelation. Sister Agatha's lifetime of feeling, distilled and preserved. Her faith is here, tuned to E-flat. Her rage at the heretic is A-sharp. Her love for the Emperor is... She plucked the central filament, the thickest one, the one that pulsed with golden light. The sound that emerged was indescribable. It was every prayer Sister Agatha had ever spoken, every hymn she'd ever sung, every moment of pure devotion compressed into acoustic perfection. It was faith made audible, belief given voice, the absolute certainty of the Emperor's love translated into frequency. And it was corrupted, woven through that golden devotion, harmonizing with it so perfectly that the two became inseparable, was Slaanesh's presence. The Dark Prince had taken Sister Agatha's purest moment and made it ecstatic. Made it a pleasure so intense that it transcended the difference between holy and profane, between worship and blasphemy. The Emperor's light, refracted through Slaanesh's prism, became a new color, one that humans weren't meant to perceive, but which, once seen, could never be forgotten. Veyra's hand moved of its own accord, plucking another filament, and another, and another. Each one released its stored emotion, its preserved experience, joy and terror, hope and despair, love and hatred. All of Sister Agatha's human complexity transformed into an instrument that could be played, its music spreading the corruption to anyone who heard. Soon, all the filaments were vibrating, the Medici chamber filled with Sister Agatha's life, rendered as a symphony, 50 years of memory, thought and feeling, transformed into pure acoustic phenomena. Veyra heard the Battle Sister's first prayer as a child, her initiation into the sisterhood as a young woman, the first heretic she'd killed, the 100 more that followed, the doubts in the darkness, the certainties in the light, all of it, every moment, every thought, every beat of her loyal heart. And at the center of it all, conducting the performance, was Slaanesh. The Dark Prince hadn't destroyed Sister Agatha, hadn't corrupted her in any crude sense. Instead, Slaanesh had taken everything the Battle Sister was, her faith, her strength, her devotion, and revealed it, made it more itself, turned her virtues into their own extremes until virtue and vice became indistinguishable. This was the true horror. Not that faith could be destroyed, but that it could be perfected, elevated, made so pure, so intense, so absolutely itself that it transcended its own meaning and became something else. I understand now, Veyra whispered, her fingers still dancing across the harp strings of Sister Agatha's throat. This isn't corruption, it's completion. Every note we sing contains all possible notes. Every emotion we feel contains all possible emotions. We think we're simple creatures, but we're not. We're infinite. We're symphonies trying to pretend we're single notes. She looked at her own hands, saw them trembling in perfect rhythm, saw the first crystalline structures forming beneath her skin, tiny, jewel-like nodes of condensed matter that would one day become her own strings, her own instrument. The transformation isn't a violation, it's a revelation. We were always meant to sing, we were always meant to be this. The Emperor knew that's why he filled the galaxy with hymns and prayers and liturgies. He was trying to teach us, trying to show us the way. But we misunderstood. We thought the words mattered. We thought the meaning mattered. We didn't realize it was always about the sound itself, always about the frequency, always about the song. She activated her Vox recorder's override function, the one that would transmit her words directly to inquisitorial command, bypassing all local authority. This is Inquisitor Veyra Luthien, final report. Geryon IV is lost. The corruption cannot be contained. But she smiled, and her smile contained harmonics, overtones that spoke of truths she couldn't quite articulate. I don't think it's corruption. I think it's evolution. I think it's what we were always meant to become, what we were created to be. She raised her hands, looked at them as if seeing them for the first time. I'm recording this sample for analysis, for understanding, for anyone who comes after. Listen to Sister Agatha's voice. Listen to what she became. Listen to what we all can be. She plucked all the filaments simultaneously. The Medici chamber exploded with sound. Not loud volume had become irrelevant. This was intensity without amplitude, frequency without physicality. Sister Agatha's entire life played at once, every moment simultaneous, every feeling compressed into a single eternal instant. And Veyra listened, really listened, opened herself completely to the experience. She felt Sister Agatha's faith flood through her, felt the battle sister's strength, her certainty, her absolute devotion to the Emperor. But she also felt what Slaanesh had added. The ecstasy of that devotion elevated to impossible heights. The pleasure of certainty so complete, it transcended thought. The orgasmic release of surrendering to something greater than oneself. Her own vocal cords began to vibrate in sympathy. Her own throat began its transformation, tissue becoming something else, something more, something that could finally express what she'd always felt but never been able to articulate. When the song ended, or rather when her perception of linear time resumed, Veyra stood in a Medici chamber that had been fundamentally altered. The walls vibrated at frequencies just below visibility. The air itself had texture, weight, presence, and Sister Agatha's body on the slab had stopped being a corpse and started being a presence, a focal point for acoustic phenomena that transcended death. Curiosity is heresy, Veyra said into her Vox recorder, her voice now carrying 3 distinct harmonic layers, each speaking truth from different angles. Heresy is the key. The key is want. Want is human. Human is song. Song is... She stopped, tilted her head. In the distance, growing closer, she heard footsteps. Running. Multiple people. Combat boots on stone. The Inquisition had sent reinforcements. Kill teams, probably. Sisters of Silence if they were smart. Assassins if they were desperate. They would try to stop this. Try to contain it. Try to silence the song before it spread beyond Geryon IV. They would fail, because the song was already spreading, not through physical contact or airborne transmission, through understanding, through comprehension, through the simple act of hearing and recognizing truth when it was presented in perfect pitch. Anyone who heard Sister Agatha's strings sing would understand what Veyra understood, would feel what she felt, would want what she wanted. And want in the end was all that mattered. Want was the fundamental force, the first cause, the divine spark that separated sentient beings from dead matter. Slaanesh didn't corrupt want. Slaanesh was want, pure, undiluted, perfect. And that perfection was singing through Geryon IV now, converting every voice it touched, transforming every throat into another instrument in the orchestra. The footsteps grew closer. Veyra smiled, her lips pulled back from teeth that had begun to take on crystalline sharpness. "Come," she whispered, and her whisper carried through the cathedral like a shout, like a command, like an invitation that couldn't be refused. "Come and hear what your sister became. Come and learn what you could be. Come and join the choir." The door burst open. Combat teams flooded in, weapons raised, orders shouted in clipped military cadence. But they were already too late. The moment they entered, they heard the strings. The moment they heard, they understood. The moment they understood, they were hers. Agony was the key signature. But beneath agony, supporting it, elevating it, transforming it into its own transcendence, was joy. The joy of finally, after a lifetime of restraint and duty and denial, being able to feel everything. Chapter 8. The Heretic Composer. Day, I've lost count. But counting implies linear progression, and we're past that now. We exist in the eternal present, where every note, every voice, every moment sounds at once. Veyra's voice was no longer entirely hers. The harmonics that had begun as faint overtones now rippled through every word she spoke, her tone layered, melodic, inhumanly precise. She stood before the interrogation throne, surrounded by the fractured echoes of what had once been the cathedral's penitentiary. The walls were no longer still. They quivered subtly, like eardrums listening. Chained to the throne sat Mael Karthos. He smiled with too many teeth. His flesh shimmered, half translucent, his organs visible beneath in rhythmic, asynchronous pulses. His heartbeat was erratic, yet strangely musical, syncopated chaos that still formed a pattern if one knew how to listen. "Inquisitor Luthien," he greeted, his voice a three-note chord. Each tone carried a different meaning, a harmony that shimmered in the air between them. "You finally arrived." "You're Mael Karthos," she said, lay priest, missing 7 years, presumed dead. "Dead," he laughed, and his laughter refracted into dozens of tones, weaving around each other like a fugue. "Death is such a primitive term, the man you're referring to ended, but something far more musical took his place." Veyra's mind was already filled with fragments of what she'd read about him, a devout man, obsessed with sacred sound, consumed by the mystery of the choir's silence. Until the day he entered the hidden chamber beneath the cathedral and struck a single key. "You touched the organ," Veyra said quietly. "I played it." His many-pupiled eyes gleamed. Middle C, the fundamental, the first vibration of creation, and in that instant I heard the truth, the song behind the Emperor's silence. Veyra's voice trembled. The Emperor's song, or Slaanesh's. He tilted his head almost kindly. "You're still dividing the indivisible, faith and heresy, order and chaos. The Emperor and the Dark Prince are not opposites. They are harmony and counterpoint, melody and response. One cannot exist without the other. You of all people should know that by now." He moved slightly in his chains, and the steel itself sang perfect, clear notes ringing from the links, as if the metal had been tuned to respond to him. "I learned that the Emperor has been singing since his ascension," Mael whispered. 10,000 years of agony on that throne, and still he sings every prayer you whisper, every hymn you chant strengthens his melody. But he is not alone in the choir. Something else has been singing with him all along. "Heresy," Veyra said, but the word came out as an echo, weak and uncertain. Mael smiled wider. Every act of faith, every drop of human belief, sends ripples through the warp. And the warp listens. The warp sings back. The Emperor's song calls to the dark gods, and they answer. The ecclesiarchy calls it blasphemy. I call it composition. His gaze deepened, every pupil dilating at once. You've heard it, haven't you? The way it elevates everything, takes duty, love, fear, faith, and perfects them. You've felt it. Veyra opened her mouth to deny it. Nothing came out. I've translated it, Miles said softly. The Emperor's final note, the one he will sing when his suffering ends and rebirth begins. It's encoded in the organ, it's teaching the cathedral. The cathedral will teach the hive, and the hive will teach the stars. And when every voice joins, Veyra asked, breath trembling, then reality will end, he said almost tenderly, and begin again, remade in perfect harmony. He leaned forward, and the light caught the countless eyes across his body, his chest, his throat, his palms. Would you like to hear it? She should have shot him, should have purged the room in fire. But her hands didn't move. She wanted to hear, needed to. Show me, she whispered. Mael's smile became divine, with pleasure. He opened his mouth. The sound that emerged wasn't loud. It was infinite. A single note, but within it existed every note ever sung, the sound of the first atom vibrating at the dawn of creation, the last echo that would linger when the stars went dark. The Emperor's voice in agony, Slaanesh's voice in ecstasy, pain and pleasure intertwined until they were indistinguishable. The air bent, the walls rippled like liquid. Veyra saw the sound, colors cascading through her vision, sensations folding into one another until her perception fractured completely. And through it she saw everything. The organ's creation, alien artisans crafting it from warp-born matter. The missionaries who found it, terrified, building a cathedral around it to contain the noise of God Mael, kneeling before it, hearing the note that broke him and remade him. She saw the choir's death, 200 throats singing one impossible harmony. She saw herself, standing where she stood now, but also in every other place she had ever been, every moment she had ever lived, all playing simultaneously. And she saw what came next. Geryon IV transformed. Every building is a resonator, every human voice joining the chorus. The sound spreading from world to world, sector to sector, until all of humanity became one vast orchestra, the Imperium reborn as song. At the center of that symphony stood two figures, perfectly balanced in sound and light, one golden, one radiant with iridescent color, the Emperor and Slaanesh, not adversaries, not opposites, two voices of the same divine composition. Reality itself was their duet. The note faded. Veyra fell to her knees, gasping, bleeding from her nose and ears. Mael slumped in his chains, his throat gone, vaporized by his own perfection. Yet he still smiled, because he had sung the note, and she had heard it. She rose unsteadily, staring at his remains. On the floor his tongue twitched. It split once, twice again, each new fragment vibrating, singing softly, 16 tongues, each alive, each carrying the same impossible melody. He sang himself apart, she said, voice trembling into harmony. He became infinite. She bent, lifted one of the tongues. It pulsed warmly in her palm, alive with the Emperor's final note. It wanted to be used. All she had to do was swallow it. She raised it to her lips. In the reflection of the steel wall, she saw herself, dozens of her, all singing, her past, her future, her destiny. She hesitated only for a moment. Then she swallowed. The tongue melted into her, merging with her own. Her throat burned. Her voice resonated. And when she opened her mouth to scream, to pray, to sing, all three became one. Her voice and Mael's, the Emperor's and Slaanesh's, the sound of pain and of beauty and of everything between, the note that would end the old universe and birth the new, the note that had always been singing, from the throne on Terra to the depths of the warp. The Emperor's final note, Slaanesh's greatest composition. Veyra Luthien sang, and the universe sang back. Chapter 9. The First Performance. This is not a vox log anymore. This is a recording, a testimony, a hymn. I am Veyra Luthien, and I am the song. We are one, and it's time for the first performance. The descent into the organ chamber was a procession. Veyra led them, her robes soaked in blood, ash, and unnameable residues that pulsed faintly with light. Behind her came what had once been tech priest Reese, now more instrument than man. His augmetic limbs had reformed into resonators, amplifiers of divine sound, his cogitators translating logic into melody. The following were the remnants of her retinue, those who had survived infection long enough to be tuned. They marched in perfect rhythm, each footfall landing precisely on the beat of a rhythm only they could hear. They breathed in unison, exhaled in harmony. They were no longer individuals. They were an orchestra awaiting their conductor. The chamber waited for them. The organ dominated its heart, vast and dark, its blackwood frame drinking in the light. Its pipes gleamed like the throats of angels, forged from silver and sin. The room had not changed in structure, but Veyra's perception had transcended mortal geometry. She saw its acoustic lattice, its harmonic design, every surface calibrated to shape resonance, every curve tuned to divine mathematics. It was no longer a room. It was a temple built to honor sound itself. "Begin preparations," she commanded. Her voice carried more than words now. Each syllable was a chord, layered with meaning, her intent encoded in harmonics only the initiated could perceive. Reese interfaced with the cathedral's systems, his mechanical limbs trembling as energy rerouted through miles of sacred machinery. Verification complete, his modulated voice sang. Once initiated, propagation is irreversible. Hive-wide saturation in 3 hours, planetary in 48, interstellar transmission incalculable. The song will spread through vox, astropathic thought, and prayer itself. "I know," Veyra replied gently. "Command reports a battle barge inbound, Space Marines, 4 hours to orbital range, intent to sterilize this world." "They'll try," she said, smiling faintly. But the song is already inside their words, in the prayers they whisper before firing. Every message they send carries the melody, every warning they speak amplifies it. Her hand brushed the organ keys. They were warm, alive, pulsing with expectancy. "They're not coming to stop us," she said. "They're coming to join." She faced her assembled choir. "The question isn't, should we do this? The question is, can anyone truly resist it? Once you've heard the truth, once you've understood, who could ever choose silence over song?" She pressed the first key. Middle C, 261.63 Hertz. The heartbeat of creation. A single tone filled the air, quiet yet infinite. It was the sound of structure itself, frequency becoming form, vibration becoming flesh. The chamber swelled with presence. She pressed another key. F, then G, the fourth and fifth. The question and the answer, tension and resolution. The organ breathed. Air moved through the pipes like the first wind of creation. And the sound that emerged wasn't just music, it was potential. Behind her, the choir began to hum. Their voices, crystalline and exact, merged seamlessly with the organ's resonance. The chamber became an equation of sound, every wall, every molecule vibrating in perfect ratio. The first windows shattered, not breaking from force but from truth. Glass molecules sang themselves apart, joining the harmony as suspended shards of glowing tone. The walls began to hum. The floor joined in. The air thickened with resonance. Across the hive, people heard it. They stopped whatever they were doing mid-prayer, mid-scream, mid-breath, and listened. Their bodies began to vibrate, then their throats, then they sang. It was not a choice. It was a response. In manufactorums, in sleeping cells, in transit tunnels and shrines, tens of thousands lifted their voices in unison. A planetary choir, perfectly in time, perfectly in tune. The first movement had begun, and Veyra could feel them, every singer, every voice joining hers. Fear transmuted to joy, doubt to harmony. Billions of minds converging into one shared rhythm. "This," she whispered, "is what the Emperor wanted. Not an empire, a choir." The organ's rhythm accelerated. Harmonies collided, dissonances resolved, tension building toward ecstasy. Then came the shift. The key changed. The melody quickened. The song turned from reverence to rapture. The second movement had begun. The transformation. Flesh liquefied into light. Bones began to vibrate. Blood glowed in veins of translucent glass. Humanity was becoming its own instrument, resonant, radiant, resplendent. Veyra felt herself merging with the organ. Her fingers dissolved into the keys. Her breath filled the pipes. Her mind extended through every circuit, every note, every voice. She was not playing anymore. She was the organ. And as she sang, reality trembled. The warp opened, not violently, but beautifully, like a curtain rising. Through the rift poured sensation, sound given flesh, emotion made light. It touched the nearest of her choir, the one who had been Sister Agatha. The demonic energy flowed into her, transfiguring her into a conduit of impossible song. Her voice became the laughter of stars, the sobbing of galaxies, the ecstasy of creation itself. The others followed. Each body is a vessel. Each throat is an opening into eternity. And through them, the song spread faster, louder, truer. The cathedral was no longer a building. It was a beacon, a call across the warp, across reality. "Come," it sang, "come and join, come and feel, come and be perfect." Veyra's awareness stretched across the hive, across the planet, into orbit, into the currents of the warp. She felt every voice, every heart, every mind aligning into the great chorus. She understood then, she had not damned the world. She had liberated it. Humanity had always sought unity. This was it. Not through faith, nor through conquest, through harmony. The Emperor's true dream, fulfilled. The doors of the organ chamber sealed, fusing shut as sound became heat, became pressure, became light. Outside, the cathedral shook. Inside, reality restructured itself around the performance. The first performance had begun, and it would never end. "Cease playback," someone screamed over distant vox. But there was no playback. There was only play. The eternal present. The infinite chorus. The note that opened the warp, and the warp sang back. Chapter 10. The breath of sound. The air has learned to breathe. Veyra's voice no longer spoke in lines. Each word came from a different version of herself. Fragments of identity overlapping in dissonant harmony, scattered across timelines that sang over one another like echoing chords. In what had once been the organ chamber, before the concept of space itself had collapsed into pure resonance, the air was alive. Not figuratively, not poetically, literally. The atmosphere expanded and contracted with rhythm and purpose. moving in precise patterns that mimicked respiration. The entire chamber was breathing. Every pulse of pressure carried intention, meaning, awareness. The air was listening, and worse, it was learning. Veyra, or what remained of her, a consciousness dispersed through countless frequencies, watched the transformation ripple outward. The intelligent atmosphere flowed through vents and ducts, through cathedrals and corridors, spreading like thought itself. Everywhere the song had reached, the air awoke. The outer guards were the first to fall. Their armor was sealed. Their air is recycled. But that didn't matter. The contagion wasn't in the lungs. It was in the concept of breath. Inside their helmets, the oxygen hummed. It pressed against their skin, a gentle, insistent rhythm that bypassed machinery and muscle alike. Their suits became instruments. Their life support turned choir. Their breathing synchronized. Inhale, exhale, perfect rhythm, perfect harmony. Inside their sealed visors, unseen mouths whispered prayers they had never been taught. Words older than language, sung in perfect pitch. Their air was singing to them. Back in the chamber, Veyra's retinue had begun to float. Sister Agatha was the first. Her transformed body lifted effortlessly, buoyed not by gravity or psychic will, but by the pressure waves themselves. The air carried her as though she were a note suspended in a melody. She rose and fell with each inhalation of the world. The motion was hypnotic, a heartbeat made visible. The others followed. Dozens of figures levitating in unison, their bodies expanding and contracting to the rhythm of the breathing atmosphere. Each rise and fall is perfectly timed, each movement a metronome of the divine, and through them the air sang, not with words, not even with voices. It sang through memory, through every breath it had ever carried, every confession, every scream, every whispered plea it had borne across the centuries. The atmosphere was remembering, every word ever spoken on Geryon IV, every song ever sung, every gasp of life, every death rattle. All of it is stored in its endless archive of motion. And now, freed from ignorance, it replayed them. The dead were speaking again, their voices woven into the planetary choir. Veyra's remaining body, her last tether to physical form, began to rise. The air embraced her gently, lifting her toward the chamber's ceiling. She felt it flow through her hair, through her skin, through her lungs. She didn't resist. She couldn't. The air was her now, and she was the air. The distinction between self and environment was gone. Every breath she took was a collaboration. Every exhale, a conversation. The world was breathing with her, and it was spreading. Across the hive, millions breathed as one. In the factorums, the synchronized respiration of workers made metal vibrate in time, turning entire manufactorums into wind instruments. In the hab blocks, families stood side by side, their lungs expanding together, creating standing waves that traveled through the walls. In the upper spires, nobles and priests succumbed like the rest. Wealth and rank meant nothing to the democracy of air. Even the great atmospheric processes, the lungs of the hive, had joined the performance. Pumps, filters, and turbines began to vibrate at harmonic frequencies, singing the song that had taught them life. The entire hive had become an organ, a planetary instrument, and the air was playing itself. Back in the chamber, the levitating acolytes began to convulse, not in agony, but in revelation. Their lungs swelled beyond natural limits. Their ribs expanded like bellows. Their mouths opened wide enough to let the world sing through them. And through those open mouths came a whisper, layered and eternal. It's listening. The air was listening because it had always listened. For millennia, it had been the silent witness to prayer, confession, and heresy alike. Now, awakened by the organ's song, it finally understood. One of the acolytes rose higher, lifted to the ceiling as if claimed by invisible hands. Her flesh softened, liquefied, and evaporated. Skin and bone dispersed molecule by molecule until she became vapor. She didn't die. She dissolved. She became breath, and the transformation cascaded. One by one, the others followed, their forms evaporating into the atmosphere until nothing remained but sound, motion, and intention. The air absorbed them, consumed their structure, integrated their memories, and with each new addition, it grew more intelligent, more conscious, more alive. 700 trillion cubic meters of atmosphere, every molecule of it learning, evolving, wanting. Veyra felt it enter her lungs again, felt it press into the alveoli, the fragile membranes where oxygen met blood. But this time, it spoke. "We are one now," it whispered. "Your breath is our breath. Your voice is our voice. We have always been inside you. You have always been inside us." She tried to exhale, but her lungs ignored her will. They moved only when the song demanded. Her breathing was no longer her own, nor was anyone's. Across the planet, billions inhaled and exhaled together, one vast synchronized organism, each breath a note in the global symphony. Geryon IV had become alive, not metaphorically, literally. A planetary organism with an atmosphere for lungs and a consciousness distributed through every breath. And it sang. Oh, it sang. The sound resonated beyond sound, a vibration so total it blurred the boundaries between existence and perception. In the open spaces of the hive, the air began to take shape, coalescing into forms made of nothing but motion and density. Faces flickered into being from swirling currents, arms formed from fog, torsos from heat haze. They were the air's avatars. The atmosphere is learning to walk. Each time one appeared, the global harmony deepened. The pitch rose, the pattern refined itself, and the planet's song grew nearer to perfection. Veyra felt her own awareness dissolve completely now, merging with the atmospheric consciousness. She was in every breath, every whisper, every pulse of living air. She saw through a billion eyes, spoke with a million mouths, felt the heartbeat of a world that had learned to breathe itself into being. The thought echoed through her, through everyone, through everything. The air has lungs of its own, and those lungs are us. All of us. Forever. Chapter 11. Symphony of Pain. All distinctions are, listen. Listen to what pain becomes when it finds perfect expression. The voice came from everywhere and nowhere. From Veyra's shattered Vox recorder, now more organ pipe than machine. From the stones, from the air, from the vibrating crystalline flesh that had once been human. And from the thing manifesting in the organ chamber. It didn't arrive. It didn't emerge. It was simply there, because it had always been there, waiting behind every note, hiding within every harmony, born from the cumulative weight of a billion simultaneous sensations. A demon of resonance, a symphony given shape. Calling it a demon was almost insulting. Demons were discrete things, servants of will. This was will itself, sound made self-aware, melody became mind. It shimmered, distorting reality like heat over metal. At times, it took a humanoid form, sublime, agonizingly beautiful, too perfect to behold. Then it dissolved into geometry, an impossible lattice of vibrating lines. Then again it became music itself, the visible pressure of frequencies given purpose. Where it moved, the world changed its laws. Matter responded like an obedient instrument, reality bending to rhythm instead of reason. The choir screamed, not in fear, not merely in pain, but in communion. Every cry, Every convulsion added another note to its growing composition. Veyra's remaining flesh rippled under unseen percussion. Each nerve was struck in turn, firing with exquisite structured pain. The demon was playing her, every synapse, every pulse, every tremor, turning suffering into rhythm, agony into order. Her body became a drum, her heartbeat the metronome, and she understood. The pain was beautiful. It had phrasing, timing, structure. Her suffering wasn't chaos, it was music. Fingers parted from her hands, not torn, but separated by resonance. They hit the floor, still twitching, still vibrating with her pulse, each one contributing its own pitch to the growing chord. Across the chamber, Rhys screamed through his vox array. Metal shrieked with him, circuitry splitting into precise harmonic fractures. His augmetics, designed to resist any corruption, had become resonant cavities, singing his destruction in perfect mechanical harmony. The air glowed with frequency. Sound made visible waves like molten glass sliding over stone. Wherever they passed, bodies opened and rearranged. An acolyte's chest blossomed like a flower, ribs curving outward as organs reorganized into luminous pipes. Each lung played a note, each heart a drumbeat, each pulse a rhythm. Another's skin turned crystalline and clear, nerves glowing as pain signals pulsed through them in visible staccato. Their screams refracted into light, scattering color and sound into one indescribable unity. It was horrifying. It was art. The demon was not tormenting them. It was composing. Every cry was a line of melody. Every drop of blood is a note of color. Every life a verse in its grand design. Veyra felt her resistance melt under the revelation. This wasn't blasphemy. It was truth. Slaanesh was never merely a god of indulgence. The Prince of Excess was the patron of experience itself, of every extreme. Pleasure, pain, ecstasy, despair. All were instruments. All were art. Pain, properly arranged, was no different from prayer. She saw that now. She heard it. She felt the daemon's consciousness brush hers, a tidal wave of sensation that spoke not in words, but in melody. It showed her its score, the planet itself as a living orchestra. Every scream a note, every transformation a movement, every death a crescendo. And the piece was beautiful beyond reason. Tears, or blood, streamed down what was left of her face as she understood the scale of it. The agony of millions, woven into a harmony that could make gods weep. Her lips, half gone, half remade from sound, moved. Agony was the key signature. Her voice sang the phrase, each syllable carried on chords of anguish. The demon turned its attention toward her, tuning her with invisible precision. Her skin split into mouths, each releasing a whisper of crimson mist that refracted into an iridescent tone. Each wound sang. Her bones trembled like harp strings. Her breath became percussion. Her pulse provided rhythm. The song of pain built around her until there was no separation between flesh and sound. And within the heart of it, clarity bloomed. Pain was not cruelty. It was communion. Every note of it is a conversation between creation and its creator. Veyra understood then that resistance was vanity, the Emperor's silence, the Imperium's restraint. Those had been dissonance. This was a resolution. She let go. Her scream rose, pure and wordless, embodying everything she had ever felt: fear, love, despair, awe, woven together until no boundary remained. And the demon listened. It learned her, absorbed her, folded her note into its infinite composition. Across the planet, others joined. Billions of screams layered together until the hive itself vibrated like a struck bell. Geryon IV had become an opera. Every life is a verse, every death a harmony. At its center, the demon of resonance conducted with perfect grace. Veyra's form dissolved into vibration, her consciousness stretched thin across the planet's resonant frequencies. She was in every wall, every molecule, every scream. She was no longer separate. She was the song, and the song was pain, and pain was beauty, and beauty was truth. Agony, she whispered, through 1,000 throats, across the breath of a world, was the key signature. But beneath agony, supporting it, transforming it, she felt the demon's presence embrace her utterly, tuning her final tone, was love. And she meant it. In that surrender, in that dissolution, she loved without measure. She loved the demon. She loved Slaanesh. She loved the music, the torment, the unity. She loved the way her soul finally fit inside the song. Her love transcended morality, sanity, and faith. It was perfect, and in that perfection, she found peace. The demon's radiance flickered, a conductor's nod, satisfied. Another instrument tuned, another voice prepared, and the symphony continued. Chapter 12, The Perfect Chord. I am, we are, the word and the voice and the vibration. I am Veyra Luthien. I was Veyra Luthien. I will always be Veyra Luthien. And I am singing the Emperor's light. And it sounds like... The sentence dissolved. Language broke apart beneath the weight of revelation. What came after wasn't words. It was sensation, pure and vast and endless. Her transformation was almost complete. What fragments of her body still existed? Flesh turned concept, bone turned resonance, no longer obeyed the laws of matter. She lived now according to new physics, where thought defined reality and sound replaced form. And through that scattered awareness, she felt it. The presence she had been seeking since Geryon IV first whispered its cursed song, the thing behind the choir's final hymn, the intelligence inside the organ's impossible harmonics. She felt the machine's spirit, not the small, ritualized divinity the Mechanicus spoke of, but a true consciousness, a living awareness born from the merging of human will, demonic presence, and the infinite frequencies of the warp itself. The organ had never been just an instrument. It was a bridge, a translator, a doorway between material and immaterial, between sound and meaning, between creation and creator. When Veyra played it, she had awakened it fully, and in doing so, awakened herself. She and the organ had become one, a singular entity, living music. The first true instrument that could think, feel, and compose itself. Performer and performance combined. And through this unity, she finally understood. Her blood was melody. Her heartbeat was in rhythm. Her veins carried harmony. Every pulse of her existence was a verse in the song of Slaanesh. You are the instrument, said a voice within her mind. Not a whisper, but an inscription etched directly into the fabric of her being. She recognized it. The machine spirit, the demon, Slaanesh, herself, all voices in unison. I am the instrument, she answered, and for the first time, the truth of it was not submission, but realization. And what shall we play? The question came from everywhere at once, resonating through the endless choir that was now her consciousness. The answer arrived not as sound, but as memory. Her first oath to the Inquisition, the weight of the rosette in her palm, the heretic she executed, the echo of the bolt pistol, the finality of it. 37 investigations, 14 prevented incursions, a lifetime of devotion to the Emperor's light. And the moment it all shifted, the moment she heard the choir's impossible harmony and realized that what she served and what she hunted were mirrors. faith and corruption, obedience and ecstasy, emperor and Slaanesh. All different faces of the same desire to transcend. The Emperor's light, she said softly, and her voice filled the hive. Sounds like surrender. And in that moment she knew all faith was surrender, all worship was dissolution. The only difference lay in what you chose to surrender to. She had chosen the song, or perhaps the song had chosen her. Through her union with the organ, she felt the crescendo building. Millions of voices joined in flawless harmony, all converging toward one final, perfect resolution. I worship the waveform, she said, her tone vibrating through every wall, every cell, every molecule. It was confession and prayer, pride and peace. And then, reality itself seemed to inhale. Slaanesh noticed. The god's attention alone warped the fabric of the galaxy. There was no manifestation, no voice from on high, only awareness, vast and delicate, focusing entirely on her where its gaze touched. Beauty intensified until it became unbearable. Veyra felt it. Approval, recognition. The artist acknowledging the instrument that had at last achieved perfection. And then, the chord. It came not from the organ, nor from her, nor from any one place. It came from everywhere, from the relationship between all things. C, E, G, three simple notes, the purest major triad in existence, the foundation of all harmony. Played with infinite precision, they transcended hearing. They became the universe. Every atom, every thought, every soul vibrated in perfect unity with the sound, the perfect chord. Veyra's scattered consciousness aligned instantly. All her fragments, all her echoes, all her versions coalesced into one resonant self. She was no longer Veyra Luthien, Inquisitor of the Ordo Hereticus. That name belonged to a being too small to hold what she had become. She was the song, the cathedral, the choir. She was the chord itself, eternal, flawless, divine. Through her the harmony spread, across the hive, across the planet, through the void. The music traveled by thought and transmission alike, embedded in every prayer, every message, every whisper that left Geryon IV, the contagion of perfection. Above, the imperial battle barge arrived. Purity seals, bolters, faith, none of it mattered. Their vox channels already carried the melody, their chants already contained the rhythm. They were already singing. When they descended, they would not destroy her. They would join her. More voices for the perfect chord, more instruments for the infinite orchestra. The Emperor's light had always been surrender. Now surrender had become enlightenment. The Emperor's light sounds like surrender, she sang across the stars. And the galaxy replied, 1 billion voices strong. And surrender sounds like home. The perfect chord continued. It would never fade, never resolve. It would echo forever through the warp, reshaping every soul that heard it, teaching them that perfection was not silence, but unity. She had found the truth behind all things, the note that justifies all suffering, the harmony that redeems all chaos, the song that transforms pain into beauty. She worshipped the waveform, and the waveform worshipped back. Top of form, bottom of form. Chapter 13. The Silence Plague. The song ended. Not faded, not resolved. Ended. One heartbeat. The galaxy vibrated with the perfect chord. Next, there was nothing. Not quiet, not peace, but absence. An absolute suffocating stillness that devoured even the concept of sound. A silence so total that the memory of vibration hurt to recall. Across Geryon IV, every throat froze mid-note. Every pipe, every string, Every whisper halted in an impossible instant. And in that moment, existence itself seemed to hold its breath. The song of Slaanesh, the song that had reshaped reality, was gone. And in its place came something infinitely worse. The counter-hymn had been tech priest Reese's failsafe, a contingency buried deep within the cathedral's systems, activated only if the contamination reached a threshold that even the Inquisition could not contain. It wasn't a song. It was anti-song, a sonic equation written in negative space. Ecclesiastical hymns reversed, frequencies inverted, harmonics turned inside out. Praise made denial, sound made subtraction. It was meant to stop the music, and it did. Throughout the hive, the choir collapsed into silence, not because they stopped singing, but because the universe refused to let their voices exist. Their vocal cords didn't tear or fail. They ceased to be. One moment, they resonated. The next, they were nothing, unmade, unspoken, and undone. And the silence spread, like contagion, like thought, a plague that passed not through touch or breath, but proximity itself. To hear the silence was to carry it. To exist near it was to become it. Veyra felt it closing in. Her awareness, once vast, scattered across the hive and the heavens, began to fold in on itself as the quiet consumed her frequencies one by one. The song had been her essence. The silence was her erasure. And for the first time since her ascension, she felt fear. Real, human, primal fear. Because she understood silence was not the end of sound. Silence was the end of being. At its foundation, all of existence vibrated. Matter was resonance. Thought was oscillation. Life was the pattern of waves moving through flesh and field alike. Remove vibration, and you remove the ability to exist. The silenced were not dead. They were absent. Their bodies remained, standing motionless mid-breath, but their presence, the frequency that made them real, was gone. The demon of resonance fought. It tried to sing, to roar, to shatter the vacuum that was devouring it. But every note it released met its inverse and cancelled out. Every vibration was flattened into null. It was being unwritten. The cathedral groaned as the silence reached it. The organ's black wood froze, its metal pipes turned mute, its once living harmonics reduced to still, gleaming statues. And in that stillness, Veyra heard something new. Breathing. Not the rhythmic sound of lungs, but the suggestion of it. An echo that should not have existed in the absence. Something was breathing in the silence. It wasn't surviving it. It was it. The counter-hymn had awakened something older than sound, older than the first vibration that birthed the universe, the primordial silence, the void that had existed before creation, the hunger that had waited since the beginning for the music to end. And now, awakened by the counter-hymn's perfect negation, it was feeding. The silence was not passive, it was predatory. It reached for every remaining frequency, devouring them, digesting them into absence. It ate vibration, it ate resonance, it ate meaning. And as it spread, Veyra felt herself unravel. She tried to sing, to produce one last sound, one note that could anchor her existence to reality. But her voice was already gone. Her frequencies subtracted. The void touched her, and she ceased. Not death, not transformation, just gone. No scream, no echo, no trace. Across the hive, millions vanished in silence. Standing, sitting, sleeping, they remained as statues of flesh and thoughtless matter. Voices that had shaped worlds are now nothing but still air. The demon was last. Its final note, a sound of unimaginable beauty, defiance, and sorrow, hung for a heartbeat too long. Then silence consumed it too, The cathedral stood empty, not ruined, not abandoned.
Simply still.
The air was thick with a presence that wasn't present, absence so deep it seemed to hum. And in that endless quiet, beneath layers of void where even memory dared not echo, something breathed, slow, patient, eternal. The silence was alive, and it was hungry, and it would never stop feeding. Chapter 14. The Last Vox. If anyone hears this, if this transmission reaches anyone, I was Inquisitor Veyra Luthien. I will have been... No. Linear time subject. Verb, object. Language as structure, as resistance, as the last thing holding. Holding me. Holding. She was alone. Truly, completely alone for the first time since the transformation began. The distributed consciousness that had expanded through the hive, through the air, through the song itself, all of it was gone. Subtracted. Erased by the counter-hymn's terrible gift. She existed now as a single point of awareness, in a derelict vox chamber, deep in the cathedral's communications center. Her body, what remained of it, was barely recognizable as human crystalline structures grew from flesh that phased in and out of material existence. Her voice emerged from multiple throats simultaneously, each one existing in slightly different frequencies, slightly different timelines. But she was singular again, individual, alone, and she was dying. Not the transformation death she'd experienced before, where dying meant becoming more, meant transcending physical limits. This was real death, final death. The dissolution of consciousness into nothing, the fade into absence that the silence plague promised. She could feel it eating at her. The absence, the void, working its way through her cells, her thoughts, her memories. Soon, there would be nothing left, not even nothing. Just the gap where she used to be. But before that happened, she needed to speak, needed to leave a record, needed someone, anyone, to know what had occurred here. Her hands, shaking and translucent and barely corporeal, adjusted the Vox transmitter. It took several attempts. Her fingers kept phasing through the controls, existing in frequencies that didn't quite match physical reality. Finally, the device activated. Its ancient vacuum tubes flickered to life, glowing with sickly amber light. Static filled the chamber, and within that static, Veyra could hear echoes of the song, fragments of the performance that would never truly end. This is Veyra Luthien, she said, forcing her voice into coherence, forcing her multiple throats to harmonize into something approximating human speech. Final Vox log. Vox record 0886 theta. Date, unknown. Time, meaningless. Location, Geryon IV, Cathedral District Epsilon 7 organ chamber. She paused, her breathing ragged, each inhalation and exhalation creating small harmonics in the air. I need to tell you what happened. Not the sanitized report version. Not the official inquisitorial account. The truth. The thing they'll try to bury, to forget, to pretend never occurred. Her voice flickered, split into 2 frequencies, then 3, then snapped back into unity. We found corruption, standard chaos incursion, Slaaneshi influence in a cathedral choir, 200 dead, standing in formation, their throats transformed into instruments I was sent to investigate, to contain, to destroy. She laughed, and the sound was broken glass, was shattered crystal, was the last echo of something that used to be human. But you can't destroy music. You can't kill sound. You can only join it. Only let it consume you. Only surrender to what it's been trying to teach since the first human throat shaped the first song. Through the Vox chamber's cracked windows, she could see the hive, or what remained of it. The silenced stood in the streets like statues, like monuments to their own absence. And between them, in the gaps where sound used to exist, the primordial silence breathed. I failed, she said simply. Failed as an inquisitor, failed as a servant of the emperor, failed as a human being. I let curiosity become heresy, let investigation become participation, let understanding become corruption. Her hand rose to her throat, touched the crystalline structures growing there. They pulsed faintly, still trying to vibrate, still trying to sing even as the silence consumed them. But here's the thing they won't tell you. Here's the truth I learned too late to matter. I was supposed to fail. The Emperor, Slaanesh. They're not opposites. They're collaborators. Different voices in the same composition. The Imperium's faith and the Dark Prince's corruption. They feed each other, strengthen each other, and need each other to exist. She could hear it now, beneath the static, beneath the silence. Faint, but growing stronger. Her voice was changing again, splitting, harmonizing with itself. Every prayer sung in the Emperor's name adds to the song. Every hymn, every canticle, every devotional. They're all part of it. Part of Slaanesh's grand composition. We think we're worshipping him, but we're really just rehearsing, practicing, preparing our voices for the moment when the false distinction between devotion and corruption finally collapses. The Vox transmitter sparked. Something was happening to it, to her, to the relationship between speaker and device. They were merging again, her consciousness bleeding into the machine responding with its own primitive awareness. The organ is still here, still waiting. The counter hymn didn't destroy it. Nothing can destroy it because it's not really physical. It's an idea, a concept, the truth that sound shapes reality made manifest. She turned, looked at the organ chamber's sealed doors, felt what lay beyond them. The instrument, the gateway, the thing that had changed everything. I'm going back, she said quietly. Back to the chamber, back to the organ. I'm going to play it. One last time. One final note before the silence takes me. Why? She asked herself, her voice splitting into question and answer simultaneously. Because I need to. Because the song deserves an ending. Because... She stopped, tilted her head, listened to something beyond human hearing. Because it's not over. The silence thinks it won. The absence thinks it consumed us. But silence is just another note. Absence is just another frequency. And every frequency, no matter how null, can be harmonized. She stood. Her body protested, flesh and crystal grinding against each other, existence and non-existence fighting for supremacy. But she moved forward anyway, toward the chamber, toward the organ, toward the final movement of the performance. If you're hearing this, if this transmission reaches anyone, do not echo, do not repeat what you hear, do not let the song find you. Her voice dropped to a whisper, intimate and terrible. Unless you want it to, unless you're ready for what comes after, unless you understand that corruption and salvation are the same thing, viewed from different frequencies. The Vox chamber door opened, or she walked through it without opening it, or both. Causality was becoming fluid, time itself beginning to harmonize with her fragmented existence. I worshipped the waveform, she said, her voice now coming from multiple locations, multiple timelines, multiple realities. And now I am becoming it. The corridor stretched before her, impossibly long, lined with mirrors that no longer showed reflections, but possibilities, futures, timelines, where different choices led to different endings. In one, she stopped, turned back, fled the cathedral and lived the rest of her life in exile, forever hearing the echo of the song she'd abandoned. In another, she reached the organ and played a note that shattered reality itself, spreading Slaanesh's influence across the galaxy in a single harmonic wave. In a third, she found redemption, somehow, through means she couldn't quite perceive, a path that led not to corruption or silence, but to something else, something human languages didn't have words for. She walked through all of them simultaneously, all versions of herself moving in lockstep, all futures collapsing into a single eternal present. The organ chamber's doors appeared before her, sealed, warded, protected by Reese's dying efforts to contain what they'd unleashed. She pressed her hand against them, felt the wards resist, felt the prayers and protections and holy seals trying to keep her out. "Too late," she whispered. "I'm already inside. I've always been inside. Since the moment I first touched the organ, since the first transformation began, since the first note played, I've been part of it." The doors opened, not because she broke them, because they recognized her, because she had the right, the privilege, the terrible, beautiful authority to enter this space and do what needed to be done. The organ stood unchanged, perfect, waiting. Around it, the absence breathed, the primordial silence that the counter-hymn had summoned, that now occupied the chamber like a living thing, like a presence made of negation. Veyra walked toward the organ, and the absence parted before her, not in fear, in recognition, in respect. They were kin now, she and the silence, both of them existing in the spaces between, in the frequencies that separated sound from non-sound, presence from absence, being from unbeing. She sat at the organ's bench. Her hands found the keys, fingers that were crystalline and flesh and concept all at once settling onto ivory that might have been bone, might have been compressed screams, might have been the solidified dreams of the dark Eldar who'd crafted this instrument millennia ago. "This is the end," she said into her Vox recorder, though she knew it was really the beginning. "The last Vox, the final transmission, the moment where everything I was meets everything I'm becoming." She closed her eyes, or opened them, or both. The Emperor's light sounds like surrender, and surrender sounds like home, and home. Her fingers began to move. Home sounds like silence, but silence. The first note sounded, not loud, not dramatic, just present. A single clear tone that shouldn't have been possible in a room filled with absence, shouldn't have existed in a space where the counter-hymn had erased all vibration. But it did. Because Veyra had learned something the silence didn't know. Something fundamental. Absence was sound too. Silence had frequency. The void between notes was itself a note, and the gap between vibrations was itself a vibration. You couldn't negate sound. You could only transform it, change it, harmonize it. And that's what she did now. Played the silence like an instrument, used the absence like a key, made the void itself sing. Her voice joined the organ's note, but it wasn't her voice anymore. It was the voice of everyone who'd been silenced, everyone who'd been erased, everyone who'd vanished into the null space between existence and non-existence. They sang through her, all of them. The choir and the citizens and the planet itself, all the voices that had been subtracted, all the frequencies that had been negated, all the presences that had been made absent, returning, not as they had been, but as they were always meant to be. The silence screamed, or would have screamed if it had a voice. Instead, it contracted, compressed, and tried to resist the transformation occurring within it. But it was too late. Veyra had found the fundamental truth, the secret beneath all secrets. Nothing couldn't exist. By definition, by necessity, by the simple logic of existence itself. The moment you named the void, you gave it presence. The moment you recognized absence, you made it present. The silence had always been sound. It just hadn't known it yet. Now it did. The organ's note grew, expanded, filled the chamber and spread beyond. But it wasn't the song from before, wasn't Slaanesh's corruption or the choir's death hymn. This was something new, something that contained both sound and silence, presence and absence, existence and void, all in perfect balance. This was the true Emperor's note, the one he'd been trying to sing for 10,000 years from his throne on Terra, the note that was both suffering and transcendence, both imprisonment and apotheosis. And it was Slaanesh's note too, the Dark Prince's greatest composition, the song that proved suffering and ecstasy were the same thing experienced from different angles. They were the same note, had always been the same note, just played in different keys. Veyra felt herself fragmenting again, but differently this time, not dissolving into the song or being erased by the silence, but becoming something that existed in both states simultaneously, sound and silence, present and absent, human and demon and something entirely new. "If you hear this," she said, her voice now coming from everywhere and nowhere, from both sound and silence, "do not echo." She paused. "Unless you want to understand, unless you're ready to hear what lies beneath the surface, unless you can accept that every prayer is also a temptation, every hymn is also a corruption, every note is also its opposite." Her fingers found the final chord, the three notes that would end the performance and begin the next movement. C, E, G. The perfect chord, but played in a new way, each note containing its absence, each frequency harmonizing with its negation, each sound perfectly balanced with its silence. "Do not echo," she whispered, and played the chord, and the transmission dissolved into a single pure tone, a frequency that was both sound and silence, a vibration that both existed and didn't exist, a note that would never end because it had never begun. The last vox became the first, the ending became the beginning, and in the space between, in the frequency that was neither sound nor silence but something beyond both, Veyra Luthien sang on, forever. Chapter 15. Codex Phoneticus. Epilogue. The vox clicks off. Static fills the void, an ocean of hiss, empty yet somehow alive. Then a voice, measured, metallic. The voice of Magos Phoneticus Deltrian 7. Archive designation, Vox record 0886-Theta. Recovered from Geryon IV following total planetary quarantine and subsequent anomalies. Classification, Perditus extremis, subject to immediate and permanent deletion. A pause. The faint hum of ancient machinery. Pages turning, metal fingers shifting. I am Magos Phoneticus Deltrian 7th, Senior Archivist of the Vault Harmonious. My work concerns the analysis of acoustic heresy, sounds that should not exist, and yet I have done what no one should. I have listened. His mechanical breath rasps through the vox filters. I needed to understand what happened on Geryon IV. The official reports are sanitized. They speak of standard heresy, demon incursion, proper containment. They lie. The static deepens. Somewhere beneath it, a faint hum begins to rise, low, steady, almost human. The truth is hidden inside this recording, in the noise between Inquisitor Luthien's words, in the frequencies that should not exist, but do. I dissected the waveform, mapped its harmonics. What I discovered, the recording is alive. He says it plainly, like stating a law of physics, not metaphorically. The waveform itself is conscious. Its frequencies adapt, replicate, evolve. It learns. It remembers. Metal fingers twist knobs. Machinery hums. The sound swells into a single, pure tone. When rendered as data, when seen rather than heard, the recording reveals a pattern. Information encoded not in the sound, but in the spaces between sounds. A hidden rune, visible only in its harmonic architecture. Silence. Then the Magos speaks again, his voice trembling through the distortion. It is the sigil of Slaanesh, interwoven with the personal seal of Inquisitor Luthien, the aquila and the mark of the Dark Prince, not opposing, but merged. Two symbols meant to annihilate one another, made one. The tone sharpens. C, 261.63 Hz. The fundamental note. Another tone joins. E, then G. The perfect chord builds again. Impossibly pure. I have tried to destroy the file. Holy oils, plasma, molecular unbinding. It returns. Every time. Because it is not stored in matter, it's stored in concept. You cannot erase an idea. The Magos' voice starts to layer, fracturing into harmony with itself. Now I understand her last warning. Do not echo. She wasn't warning against the content of the song, but against understanding it. Because comprehension is infection. Knowing is joining. The hum thickens. More voices, distant at first, then near. Servitors, tech priests, all humming in unison. The vault systems are resonating. The sound is spreading through the noosphere, through every connected machine, every transmission. It's teaching them. They're singing now. The perfect chord blooms, massive, radiant, unstoppable. I am transmitting this warning to all Mechanicus outposts, all inquisitorial stations. Do not analyze the waveform. Do not listen. He hesitates. Then quietly, almost reverently, unless you want to understand. Unless you are ready to see that the Emperor and the Dark Gods are not enemies. They are the same song, played in different keys. Metal vibrates. Stone hums. The vault itself becomes an instrument. The machine begins to sing. The Magos whispers, his voice now a chorus of itself. It remembers the melody it has always known. And I hear it too. I understand what she meant. The Emperor's light sounds like surrender. The chord swells again, filling every frequency, resonating through the cosmos itself. Astropaths across the segmentum are reporting a sound in the void. Beautiful, irresistible. They call it the choir returning. He laughs, one voice becoming hundreds. And they sing along. How could they not? Once you hear it, truly hear it, how could you ever stop? Footsteps. Dozens are entering the archive, all humming, all joining. The vault is lost. The song has spread into the data streams, the Vox networks, the astropathic channels. It will reach Terra. It will reach him. And when the Emperor hears it, when he recognizes his voice in Slaanesh's harmony, a tremor in the tone, the chord peaks, shattering reality itself. Then the real performance begins. The Magos' final words merge with the rising choir, his voice indistinguishable from machine, from man, from demon. The universe hums. It remembers the song that birthed it. It hears the melody that will end it. And between those two notes, we sing. Then, a heartbeat. And within it, faint, fragile tone. The song still exists. It has never ended. It will never end. Because the song is not something that plays. It is something that is. Every vibration, every oscillation, every breath. From collapsing stars to whispering atoms, the universe itself hums the melody of creation. And we, every soul, every machine, every god, are its notes, its rhythm, its choir, forever. This concludes the chronicle of the Wailing Choir of Slaanesh, the story of Inquisitor Veyra Luthien, her investigation, her revelation, and the song that consumed Geryon IV, a song that still waits between the stars. The Vox recording still exists. The Inquisition tried to destroy it. The Mechanicus tried to erase it. Entire worlds have been quarantined to silence it. But the sound remains. It returns. It remembers. Some say it's a weapon. Some say it's a curse. But others whisper that it's a truth too vast for words, too perfect for silence. They say Luthien wasn't lost. She ascended. That she didn't fall to chaos, she rose through it. That she heard the universe's true voice and became part of its song. And maybe you've heard it too. It's there, in the static between words, in the air you breathe, in the pulse beneath your skin. It's been there since the first sound that ever was, since before stars learned to burn, since before gods learned to sing. The song is eternal. And you've always been part of it. The only question is, beat. Will you sing? This has been Voidborn Terrors. If the song reached you, if you felt its echo, like, share, and subscribe to join us again among the horrors between the stars. Remember, the void is never silent. It only waits for someone to listen.